Let's just push this button. Yo! What up? It your boy, Tristan. Hey. Welcome to Step Back Tonight, the weekly... Oh, there's a Romeo there. Welcome to Step Back Tonight, the weekly show that I do where I hang out with y'all for a few hours and we have a nice Tuesday evening together. I think I saw that we got a new face in the chat. If you're new, please make yourself known. I'm always happy to see new folks in the chat. And of course, all y'all regulars are welcome as well, of course. Oh, boy. So, what to talk about? So, first of all, channel news. The Bernie Sanders video is doing pretty well. So that is something you can be happy about. I know I'm happy with that. What else can I say? Just a second. Let's see. Bernie Sanders video is doing super well. It's already outperformed the Haudenosaunee Confederacy video, and it's on track to outperform the other one, the Joe Biden video. So I guess Sanders has won the Step Back primary. Some other things I can mention, too, is due to some scheduling constraints, I'm going to, for anybody who is a fan of the Monday streams that I do at 1 p.m. Eastern, those are going to be temporarily on hold until probably the second week of July. Just because, actually, probably the third week of July because of VidCons. So it will probably be, just doing the thing here, it'll probably be July 15th. When I have my next Monday afternoon stream. But they will come back, and I'll tell you that because I have some grand news for you guys. I just today put in my my resignation notice at my work because I'm, with some freelance work and stuff like that, going to be doing this Step Back thing full time. Friends. Isn't that bananas? I'm waiting until people actually have a reaction. So at the end of June, I'll be no longer employed at the place that I was working, and I will be a step backer. It's a little scary because it's a little bit less than, what I would like to have been at to do so. But, we're getting there. We're getting there. So it's going to be kind of hitting the ground running, trying to find those sponsors and try to find new pathways towards making cash. So if you want to, lower my anxiety, paypal.me/stepbackhistory or patreon.com/stepbackhistory. Gotta keep pitching that. Or if you're really feeling frisky, you can always toss me one of them super chats because, anxiety, friends. What? Okay. Kelly's typing something out. Comrade Jane is from Scotland and wants you to do a Scottish accent. Well, so we have a Scottish person here. That's excellent. I'm probably butchering the accent of your wonderful people, but yes. Welcome from Scotland. I hope that some joke about lifting large logs and throwing stones. That's very Shrekky. And I've done better Scottish accents, but there you go. Thank you, Comrade Jane, for watching the stream. Yeah, so this stream I do every week. I hang out with y'all. I usually answer some questions. We have some great discussion. We have a good time. Ooh, Dalton Jones, thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. All right. Hello, dark eye that I am looking into right now. Okay. So yeah, got the front. Whoa. So I guess I should probably cover the basics. So step backs. What's it called? The countdown streams taking a break for about a month, and the video, or what's it called? And the quitting my job to make better step back videos. Next week I'm going to the YouTube space to film with Thought Slime. That'll be fun. And yeah, I think that's all the things. That's all the front matter, anyways, aside. And yes, do not worry. Laura was here. There will be cat. Cat is always happening. Ooh, I should probably get like my dashboard so I can see how many of you folks are watching right now. 23, man. Okay, 24 now. Sorry, I'm like setting up my screens because just like ran from eating dinner to doing the stream, so you know, little bananas. Hmm. Okay. It's okay. Now mock some Anglos. Oh, we can mock Anglos, all right. I'm sure we're gonna get some questions about the fact that Trump is in the UK right now. Except that the Anglos are doing cool stuff. They're inflating giant, like Donald Trump balloons that look like babies to humiliate him. Jeez. Yeah, today's my anniversary. 3 years, because I remember 3 years ago on the day of my wedding was when I hit 1,000 subscribers. So that's a thing. All right. Yeah, Comrade Jane, it's okay. Please mock some Anglos. Hey, Anglos. Remember when you guys, here's one for the Scots. Hey, remember when the Anglos voted for Brexit and you guys didn't? And now this thing. This goes. Oh, no. Alright, it says you're getting things, but I'm getting lots of drop frames.
You're still spinning for me.
I'll give it a second to see how it sounds. Don't say YouTube is down again. No, YouTube just kind of freaking blows at having a good connection. I'm not exactly sure what's going on because, like, I did the same thing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and then all of a sudden, awesome. I did the same thing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and then all of a sudden, now the server sucks, and I don't exactly know why this keeps happening. Either way, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, it was somebody pointed out. Yeah, remember when England conquered a quarter of the world and complained about foreigners? And also, I think I said on top of, I think I said, I don't know if this made it through when I got like disconnected and shit, but are you serious?
Yeah.
Still dropping frames like nuts, and I don't exactly know why. Okay, so it's working. All right. So yeah, I think y'all need to start pushing that William Wallace energy. That's my opinion. Are you running anything else on your computer? I don't think so. It's not like an issue with like my what's it called? With like my CPU. The CPU usage is very low. It's just, yeah. All right, maybe that has fixed it. Let's see. All right. It's looking good now. Hasn't dropped frames a bit. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Scotland. Okay, I think my William Wallace energy joke got through. So, let's just say that English people, England is one of the least fun parts of Europe, and they should have stuck with Europe. Now that they think they're too cool for Europe, they're going to lose the whole United Kingdom. So, congrats on that. Scotland, if Brexit happens, GTFO, the United Kingdom's not doing any good for you anymore. Okay. Whew. Let's do a thing, shall we? Let's answer some actual questions 18 minutes into the stream. If it wasn't for the bullshit capitalist job complex, you think we would have automated fast food restaurants by now? Oh, hell yeah. The technology, like if I mean, I've been a fast food cashier, and I'll tell you, I did not enjoy the experience. It is a boring remedial job that I imagine many people would not want. And so if you didn't have capitalism to make people so poor and desperate that they were forced to do it, you would definitely be highly incentivized to move towards a fast food system that is based on just pushing buttons and food coming out. They're starting to do that. They're starting to do that now, and people love it. I also love it. What is next? Wasn't Tiananmen Square so nice 30 years ago where nothing of importance happened? Nice job, Jeb. Very disappointing. What's it called? Yeah, today is like the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, where pro-democracy protesters were run over by the Chinese with the tanks and stuff. So, and the Chinese have done extensive work to make sure that nobody knows that happened in China. So in China, they have no consequence. They have no idea that Tiananmen Square happened, which is real weird. What kind of cringe are you bringing to us today? Whatever. I don't know. I trust me. I'm going to be talking for a few hours. I feel like there will be cringe at some point. Okay. Doughboy DeVito wants to know, why does the average age of bread tubers seem to be between their mid-20s and early 30s? Well, because most people who do bread tube are doing like philosophy and stuff like that and politics, which, you know, in order to speak to those things, helps to have a university degree. So there's not a lot of like bread tubers who are younger than about 22. But also, like, there's some other things, like, there's a big cohort of bread tubers that came of age on somethingawful.com, which had its heyday when people who are in their late 20s and early 30s were in high school, myself included. And so there was Something Awful, which created a lot of internet comedians who then, like, you know, were very online earlier than a lot of other people, and so became internet content creators later on. And just the fact that you have to be, like, you know, it'd be harder to have a bread tube channel if you don't have, you know, an education of some kind. Not saying you can't do it. A lot of autodidacts out there would just be tougher. Sorry, I don't know why I'm yawning now. Jake Anderson, quick question. Do you plan on using the subscription function on YouTube? You mean like the join this channel thing? The option hasn't become available to me yet. I have considered it. It's kind of like a version of Patreon for people who don't want to use Patreon. I'm thinking I might set it up. You know, it is when you are an online content creator, you really have to try and push all of your funding options that you can, and channel memberships are definitely one of them. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but because I said I don't have it available to me. But once it is, I'll probably set something up. I imagine that it will be. I'm either going to make it I don't want to double dip, right? Like I don't want to say to patrons, "Hey, patrons, you should also become members because there's going to be exclusive content just for members." But what I think I'll try to do is I'll find out how much. I think membership is like $5.99 or something like that, and I'll make available the patron tiers that are available at that same funding level. That's probably what I'll end up doing. And if that's the case, then you get in the credits and stuff like that. And yeah, the thing I would say though to members is like if you really want to give a customized amount, you can go on Patreon, and on Patreon I have stretch goals and stuff like that, so you contribute towards that. So I don't know, it really depends upon what's going on. Did you see some more news? Like the latest one? I do watch the channel, but I am extremely far behind on YouTube videos. Like I think I'm like over 3 weeks behind on YouTube videos, so I haven't seen the latest in the some more news videos. Was there a particularly good one, Logan? Question, is the animal rights activist that took the mic from Kamala Harris a chauvinist? So I did hear about this, that a animal rights activist who looks like, his name is Aiden, and he looks exactly like somebody named Aiden would look. And he took Kamala Harris's microphone away or like charged her mic to try and say something about animal rights. Like nobody gave, like when Black Lives Matter did that to Bernie Sanders, my initial reaction was to get grumpy, but in the end I realized the importance of it. It's direct action, and maybe I don't agree with the cause, but I think that it's one of the more, it's one of the more benign ways that you can try and get attention to your cause, I guess. Kevin Logan has given up on Corbyn because he won't make the Labour Party commit to either being for or against Brexit. Thoughts on that? It's fine. I don't know much about British politics. I know that Jeremy Corbyn is just kind of like a better option than many other politicians. And if you've got extremely high standards, that you won't take like the best thing that's happened in British politics in like 30 years, like since like not even 30 years, more than 30 years, like since like Attlee, there really hasn't been this left wing of a Labour Party leader. If you're really going to like throw that away because you won't commit to things, I don't know. It just seems like that's a high standard to have for leaders in electoral politics. But then again, I'm not British, so and I've compared Brexit in this stream as a mine cart trip to hell. So I can imagine it's very high stakes. So could be a thing. Why don't you agree with animal rights? I don't, or I do agree with animal rights. I think it's fine. I think that some animal rights activists have a unrealistic concept of what animal rights might be, but I'm definitely against things like the brutality of factory farming, and I am totally against animal cruelty and such like that. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. Like that's where I would go with that. Some woman pop the Trump balloon. That's depressing. Something's going on outside. Remember when I told you could you take Kelly to the communist future? Could you please ask her if she'd actually want to go? Would you want to go to the communist future, Kelly?
Maybe. What was the alternative again? Being dead?
Staying here.
Oh, yeah, I probably would go.
All right, she said yes. Do you have a favorite kind or favorite style of curry? Oh boy. Favorite? I don't know. I have some ones I like. I will say I really like Thai coconut curry. I think that shit's awesome. And I'm pretty into the two curries that are like the fake British curries, like butter chicken sauce and tandoor. Not tandoor. Is it? No, tikka masala. Tikka masala. Those ones are pretty good. I like the yogurt base of the tikka masala. I guess that's my answer. How much research goes into a step back video? Have you ever said, I could research this subject, but I have to get a video out in a timely manner? So there's a couple things to say that. So how much research goes into a step back video? A fair bit. It's a sliding scale, obviously. But for a full step back video, like one of the ones I do at the end of the month, those can take, when I get my system up and running that I want to get up and running, will take a month of just doing research. For example, the Paris Commune video probably took me the better part of a month to do the research. And that included things like talking to Donnie Gluckstein and getting that interview going. At the moment, I have a process that involves finding sources, then trying to track them all down, and then actually processing them one by one. That's not exactly a great great description of the research, but I try to do about a month and at least get a few like solid books in, so I can get multiple perspectives on what's going on. And I have definitely, especially in some videos, I'd probably say that the videos that I get the least proud of come from when I had to cut off research in order to get the video going, because fairly often what happens is that the more research you do, the more likely you are to have interesting details, a stronger narrative, and a more interesting take. Like, this is the reason why I think that Philosophy Tube videos are so good, is because like Ollie does a shit ton of research when he does his work. So in my mind, I think that the more research is better. Fairly often I'll have like, a couple weeks, a week maybe, when I'm like, pressed for time. Probably the fastest turnaround I've had is like a day, and then I have to get like lazy, and I really don't like when I have to do that. But for the most part, and hopefully this, dropping my day job will fix this, is that I will have a month to do research, which means I have time to go to the library and sit and read books for like several afternoons and think about things. And like for my video that comes out at the end of July that I'm supposed to be, I'm finishing up research now and I'm getting into writing, but I'm still doing research because I was pretty busy in May. The video that is coming out at the end of July, I have 2 professional interviews lined up. I have 1 potential celebrity interview, although I've been trying to email him like multiple times and he hasn't gotten back to me, so we'll see about that one. But yeah, in this Ancient Aliens video, I do have 1 professor that I'm doing a interview with sometime this month to get to quickly get like some more stuff so I can make my video, because this is the last one where I don't have a month to do each part of the process. The quick step videos are a bit of a quicker thing. They're designed to be able to be done in a day. So my quick step videos, I tend to talk about subjects that I already know quite a bit about, and I just do a little bit of research to make sure that I'm up to date on it. But even then, like every time that I've had to take down a quick step video, it was because I was pressured to talk about something that I didn't know enough about, and I did it because that's what people wanted, and then I took it down, and so I just kind of like bleh. So I've learned to resist that push to do the easy thing and have a take on something that people want to know about, but I don't myself feel confident in, because that's always screwed me over. I've had 3 videos where that happened. One was the SNC Lavalin scandal video. One was the Jordan Peterson video, which, you know, I'm glad I took it down because other people made Jordan Peterson videos that are way better than what I would have made. And the other one was the Venezuela video. Should we bring back the French Revolutionary calendar? I like it. I guess it's all right. I don't particularly care. Have you ever considered making a video? For the French Revolutionary thing, I can say I got extra credit on an exam once because I took a French Revolution class in undergrad, and the teacher gave me extra credit because I wrote the date in the French Revolutionary calendar, and she thought it was cute, so she gave me an extra mark on the exam. So that was fun. Have you ever considered making a video on the St. Patrick's Battalion, the Irish Catholics that fought for Mexico in the Mexican-American War after immigrating to the USA during the famine? Well, Ina, I have considered making videos on lots of things. I think I've mentioned a couple times in my streams that I'm sitting on something probably close to 1,000 video ideas and sifting through them all to see which ones are the best ones to move forward with when I only make one like hardcore step back video a month can be difficult. Right now, just on videos that I want to talk about that I think are pressing and interesting, I'm booked until like the end of 2021. So, and then, you know, with things like Patreon stretch goal videos and things like that are going to keep it going longer. I really, though, need to find a solid way to get take video suggestions, because people I literally get like half a dozen of them a day that I really want to, you know, give them the time of day that they need. But I'm not going to be able to commit to making videos more than once a month because things need time to be good. That is a lesson I need to learn. And so I hope that it's going to be a series of prioritization. I used to have a really cool system for that, but it wasn't necessarily leading to good video suggestions. But I have a couple ideas that I might flesh out when I get there. You need an assistant. First of all, I need to make enough money so that I can pay Tristan bills. And then when I'm making enough money that I can hire a second person, then I can get an assistant. Got to pay yourself first. So this is really interesting. I'm sure the St. Patrick's Battalion is a really cool story. I just don't know when I'll ever get to it, to be honest. And I'm sorry, I know it's disappointing to hear, but just like I can only do so much. Isn't Kelly your assistant? She is sometimes, but she is as my wife, she is she's my property, and so she just kind of does free labor for me every once in a while with unpaid labor. So she does things like this where she can just kind of hang out and collect questions for me, which is great. But she does, but like doing something like an assistant would have, where it'd be like an assist. Like if I were to have an assistant to push for me making more videos, it would be either a research assistant, where like getting Kelly, who has a full-time job and a small business of her own, getting her to do anything more than like writing down these questions for me when I do these streams, as opposed to like go read this book and come back with notes. That feels like crossing a line, or things like that. Whatever. You're talking about wife being property. I'm her property and she's my property. That's how it works. That's what marriage is. We both can take each other a little bit for granted. That's the point of that's what marriage is all about. ContraPoints has made it obvious that she believes that the point of transitioning is to appeal to cis people. I feel like that's a little of a oversimplification of her stuff, but okay. Let's just take the point for granted. Don't you think this harms more trans people than it helps? Well, I guess I would push back against what your characterization of ContraPoints as ContraPoint. I would say that it's a little more nuanced than that, but it's definitely not. I mean, this is kind of on the video that the Tiffany Tumbles video she did a while back, right? I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not a trans person, and if there's anything I've learned is that I am not an expert on the trans experience or trans issues, and when I'm asked questions about whether or not ContraPoints, a trans woman, is hurting trans people, I feel like asking some cis white asshole on the internet to weigh in on that is not going to yield any answer that is going to have any merit. It'd be like asking me about like astrophysics. I'd be like, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing that exists. But my imagination is that ContraPoints, from someone who I talk to on the occasion, she's I think her positions are a bit more nuanced than that. Especially if you like watch the last I mean, she's got like years of content now, kind of breaking it down. Do you believe Biden participated in the March on Washington? Do you actually believe Biden participated in the March on Washington? I didn't even know he claimed that, but could be. If he was in the Washington area, he might have seen it, but I have no idea. I have no idea what young Biden was like. Like most boomers, he might have started off being very optimistic and then became a sallow, empty human in the 70s like the rest of them did. Okay. Thoughts on Swirfs or TERFs? They're bad? I haven't we're getting really into so for anyone who doesn't know, Swirfs and TERFs are two streams of thought currents in radical feminism. Okay. Which then I'm like, okay, now we have to get to what radical feminism is. So radical feminism is academic feminism. It's the idea of deconstructing gender as a concept, and trying to figure out what gender even means. And as somebody who has studied gender theory in university, I would consider myself a little bit of a radical feminist, but I know that the term has changed quite a bit. And in more recent terms, especially with these two currents, which are subcurrents of radical feminism, which are sex worker exclusive radical feminism and trans exclusive radical feminism, which are both not good. I will preface by saying not good. So most of these two currents come from the sex wars. Let's start with the Swirfs anyway. So sex worker exclusive radical feminism comes from something called the sex wars, which was a time when was basically when second wave feminism was coming crashing to the ground in the late 80s, where there was the discussion about sex work, because in the 1980s, a lot of the second wave feminist activism was about doing things that they thought were what needed to be done to make things better for women. Like you had like Catherine McKinnon and such, who were trying to make pornography illegal, who were trying to crack down on prostitution laws, things like that. What happened was, though, is that when the third wave sort of turn happened in the early 90s, where you had this like breakdown of like, okay, like the way that the second wave feminist movement works very much is a movement run by white women, and doesn't open up for more experiences and more points of view. And out of that, there was, the coming out and saying like, oh, like there are sex workers who are like it's like who are arguing that this is legitimate labor. We should listen to them. They are women too. But there's a holdover of second wavers who disagreed with this development, and they've kind of battened down the hatches, and they still argue that sex work is bad, and they're still working on it. And I think that if you watch the Philosophy Tube video on sex work that came out fairly recently that I thought was really good, you'll see a little bit about where people are on that. Trans-exclusive radical feminism is a current which came out of second waverism as well, that is about, like, as I talked about how radical feminism went into discussions about breaking down concepts of gender and what gender even means. And there is, and this has roots, if you really want to go like really, really, really far back, to the point where like there's like, connections are even like broken, is people like Simone de Beauvoir, who was a French feminist from like the 1960s or something, which had these ideas that femininity and femaleness, feminineness, womanness is embodied. It is an embodied thing. So this is like the idea of like this is the idea of defining gender as one's biological capacity to have children and genitalia, and like if you were like to imagine Simone de Beauvoir, who like had like written essays about like how women need to be furiously masturbating all the time in order to like explore themselves and like liberation, all these kinds of things. This is like very really like old feminism stuff, and really like stuff that only existed in the academy. But again, when we started entertaining new perspectives, i.e. when the second wave came across as this very privileged, this very privileged thing that just really looked out for the interests of middle-class white women, cis white women, this is like, well, like, how do we talk about the trans woman experience? And like, also a lot of the stuff they talked about didn't make sense for all sorts of other things. Like, why don't we talk about, like, if you think that like reproduction is like required to express femininity, then like, what about women who can't have children? And just things like, it got convoluted. And so very much, when it came to TERFs, it's also a carryover from this second, third wave break that happened. And a lot of like boomer second wavers who, instead of adapting to these new changes in the 90s, doubled down. This is like the one branch of philosophy I can actually speak to. So it broke down, and since then, since the 90s, we've had a very detailed, like we've had a lot more very positive sexology research on not only what like gender means, but like what sex means and how it's way more complicated than people were making it out to be. To the point where, but like a lot of this is a reactionary being against these currents. Then it also became a way for transphobic, non-religious people, because like if you go to America, anti-trans bigotry tends not to be TERFs, tends to be like religious people. Oh, my cats are fighting. Lovely. This is great. So that so like it's like in America, it's like, you know, religious bigots, while like in places, I think that if I remember correctly, TERFs are the most prominent in the United Kingdom. It's sort of festered in online hate groups called like one's called like Mumsnet or something like that, and it's sort of developed into a sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, like a even though I imagine she's not a TERF, but like J.K. Rowling TERFism, you know? I think there's like a website in the UK called Mumsnet that sort of gets that like pushes that forward. So it is a way to use feminist language in order to propel transphobia, but like honestly, both of them are hang-ups from second wave feminism that are extremely out of date, kind of like how if you like how how racists use outdated theories about race to justify their bigotry. It's the same idea, just about outdated concepts of feminism. Yeah. So that's like my take. All right. All right. Thoughts on pessimism and suicide. Oh, Decoy Sheep. Thank you. Someone say Tristan Bills remix edition. Well, thank you, Decoy Sheep, for the $10 super chat. Much appreciated. I appreciate your contribution to me not having panic attacks when I have to pay my bills. Thank you. Now we can go to the cheery topic of pessimism and suicide. Well, what should I say? Pessimism is a completely rational decision, completely rational reaction to the way that things are in the world, but it is also very not constructive. I think one of the greatest things that I heard with it was in the climate denial video that H Bomber Guy put out lately, was that kind of fatalism is a sometimes food, and you've got to like and sometimes you just gotta like, you know, drink your problems away, but then you wake up the next day and you gotta keep moving forward. Suicide is a completely different thing. Suicide is that's a whole philosophical quandary, but I will say that there are people who like a lot, like I've talked about suicide before in previous streams, and a lot of what I've said in those streams stands up, which is that a lot of suicides, if they are unsuccessful, the people who do them almost immediately regret them, and fairly often they are impulsive decisions that if somebody can intervene in the short amount of time that somebody is contemplating it, then usually you can save them. But also, I make the argument that nobody owns your body but yourself, and that if you are of sound mind and body that you want to end your own life, that is your prerogative, and the state, no one, I don't think anybody, aside from people who you will personally affect with your own demise, nobody can really tell you what to do with yourself at the end of the day. And I really wish that, and I do think that that's kind of where I would be on that. Do you think we should be preparing for an economic crash? You should always be preparing for an economic crash. Capitalism only functions in boom and bust cycles, and so there will always be another bust. There will always be another economic crash. So just, just do it up. Always be prepared. Have you considered making a video on the German SPD? It has a lot of interesting twists and turns that could generally be as a narrative from the majority of European social democratic parties. Ina, I will give you the same answer I gave for the previous one about the St. Patrick's Brigade. That I get a lot of ideas and I can't get them to them all. I'm sure it's really cool. I need to find a good way to impartially receive video suggestions from audience members and then process the best ones into a future video schedule. I haven't worked out the solution to that yet, but won't the price of U.S. Medicare for all costs rise radically due to private healthcare providers lobbying politicians for them? Isn't that what happened with U.S. college tuitions? No, Gad. So the thing is, at the moment, governments have no power when it comes to negotiating healthcare costs. Like every other country on Earth, when you take healthcare out of the market and the state is paying, the state will have the power. If you are the US NHS and you're negotiating with Pfizer for how much their pill is going to cost, they can't afford to lose your business. You have all of the power in that negotiation. And so drugs will be a lot cheaper. The reason why things are so expensive right now is because the U.S. directly gives corporations money, just kind of bribes them into doing the things that they want them to do. It's very different. Did you say Ancient Aliens? Yes. That is going to be my June video. Thoughts on incels? Tips for getting a girlfriend? Well, alright. Incels... I mean, there's a whole... Incels are a whole mess in and of themselves. Incels are... To give like a wrap-up, people who have not been successful in love and sex and such, who have internalized a form of toxic masculinity, have sort of interpreted those two things to manifest in this extremely vile hatred and vitriol against women, blaming them for their not being able to date, and not introspecting. So what I would say, and then also getting conned into online communities and Reddits and like pickup artists and such, and they kind of go. And I mean, there's all sorts of different versions of them, right? There's all sorts of blah cells that are different streams that these people go down to try and get themselves out of their situation that that increasingly make no sense. But it also manifests, and it has on several occasions, in like mass shootings and murder. That shows that like the intervention really needs to be about targeting the toxic masculinity, the expectation that women owe you sex like it's some sort of capitalist transaction. You know, I got enough good boy points, you have to have sex with me now. But I think that is a dehumanizing view of sex and dating. It's definitely a dehumanizing view of women because it completely ignores their autonomy. And I like for a lot of, I feel like if incels weren't so shitty, I'd feel bad for them because I was in that situation for most of my adult life. Like I was like until I met Kelly, I had been single since I was 17. So that is nobody since my senior year of high school all the way through university and then into my master's degree. And so that's so what I would say to that is that's that I can empathize, although I do not sympathize with their situation. And I remembered when I was in the deepest parts of those, like, you know, dark moments, feeling, and I mean, there is like a deep feeling of like rejection and hurt that comes with being constantly rejected, because the way that heterosexual relationships and dating work right now is that men are given a lot of burden to be to have initiative and to push forward and to ask and to be rejected a lot. And that is emotionally taxing, and something that we don't acknowledge, that can be very emotionally, that can be an emotional weight if you don't keep going for it. And so we need to realize that those are legitimate feelings to have. And you have to find healthy ways to handle those feelings, because going down a spiral that leads to self-hatred and anger is not going to be constructive to you. It could turn you into someone you really don't want to be. As for tips for getting a girlfriend, I think that Argos, you might want to look at things from a different perspective. Because I know that kind of thinking. It's very typical young dude thinking. But honestly, if you look at it more from the perspective of, like, instead of how do I get this thing that I want, which, you know, kind of undermines women's ability to you know, their own agency. What you should do is more think about it in the way of you're interviewing for a job. Well, maybe that's not the best way to say that. Dating is just finding the person you click with, and it is a rough process. Sometimes you're going to meet people you think you click with and then you don't soon afterwards, or people that, you know, you click with for only a short amount of time, or things like that, or people that you think click with but they don't think the same. And there's really no easy way to handle that except be a kind of person that people want to be around. If you think about it from other people's perspective, be the kind of person that they would want to date, i.e., don't be a dick, and like, you know, be understanding of other people's human agency and respect women that you want to spend time with, and don't see them as some sort of prize or commodity. I feel like a lot of the incels who have gone down that path are incels because of the toxic ways that they think about women, because they spent too much time on Discord or whatever. Like, they've spent too much time online. They've spent too much time in these like toxic reactionary spaces that they don't blame themselves. My Nana made great shortbread biscuits. Oh, you are Scottish. Okay. So my tip for getting a girlfriend is to be nice to people, and also put yourself out there. Put product, like, you know, try to be nice and maybe put a little effort into how you look when you go out. Trust me, little will go a long way. That's what I've learned. Because so many men don't put in any effort, and what I'm learning is, if you even put a little bit of effort into the way that you look, like even if it, you know, even if it's not everything, it at least like showing that you made the effort will at least get some people will at least get some impressive people. And then think about it not as like anybody would work, but as like finding the right match, you know? It's like trying to find someone to give you a kidney.
Your dating advice is so weird right now.
It's true. Be nice and make an effort. It's kind of the wrong way to think about it. It's more just don't think anyone owes you anything. Be yourself and people will come. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too. I feel like I'm just getting convoluted. 'Cause yeah. All right. Let me just move on to the next question. I'm getting commands from up above to do so. I want to do proper research to make a couple of videos my own, but I'm paranoid I will miss something. How do you know when you're ready enough to post a video? Very often when you're doing research, you're going to start going in circles. I find that I'm quote unquote done research when I'm reading stuff and I'm finding that, as you do more and more research, you're going to be less and less surprised by the things that you come across in your research. And eventually things just start referencing back to things that you've already read. And by that point, you probably know more than enough to start making things. Or, very often the grad student thing to know when your research is done is when you run out of time to do research. And then, of course, think about it like you can always go back and find more. Will you use the I Ching to divine what video you should make? Ooh, that would work. Have you done a Peterloo massacre video? No, I have not. Thoughts on the Fourth Crusade? Was it based? Okay. Was it based? The Fourth Crusade was silly, that's for sure. That was the one where they attacked Constantinople for reasons that I can't remember because I'm not really much of a medievalist. It was definitely silly, if I remember correctly. It had something to do with like money, and that was like when like Crusades had pretty much fallen off the deep end. Opinion on Tallman, the Stalinist leader of the KPD before World War II. In my opinion, he was a bit of a Nazgul. takes like working with the SA to overthrow the Weimar Republic and implement communism are bad. Yeah, I don't particularly like any Stalinists, to be honest. I don't really know much about tall men, but I probably will in the future because I'm going to be working in the fall on a video about the Soviet Union and how do we talk about the Soviet Union today. But I don't think I start research for that until July, so I haven't gotten there yet. Thoughts on the changes to YouTube? What have you noticed has changed on YouTube? I noticed a lot more YouTubers are sponsored. That's a big question. Let's think. There's been lots of changes to YouTube since I started using it. Mostly the big thing that I can remember is that since I started using YouTube, the partner program got a lot harder to maintain. Like now you have to have a certain threshold to get in because of like all the stuff that happened with the adpocalypse. Patreon's become ubiquitous. Sponsorships, because sponsorships are way more effective than display ads because we've learned how to tune out ads. So sponsorships have become way more of a thing. Yeah. I mean, people are trying to find ways to leverage this into full-time income, and it's an uphill battle. And people do sponsorship. I think that it's advertising. I don't see the difference between like a sponsorship in a video and a display ad, except for the fact that one pays you more, and that money more directly goes to the creator. And typically you get some sort of discount code, which is nice. Didn't radical feminism originally mean anti-capitalist feminism? It might have been. I'm trying to remember. Definitely meant like when I think of radical feminism, I was always thinking of like the feminists who went down different intellectual like holes in like the 60s and stuff like that. Like I know radical lesbian feminism, and like to like get to like some real extremes, you get to like weirdos like Mary Daly who had some interesting opinions about things. Yeah. Thoughts on Unknown? Why did he paint so many paintings and write so many books? I think that's a joke. I don't know. I don't know if is there someone named Unknown? Is it just a gag about how there's so many paintings that are done by people that they don't know or write books? I don't know. I am unknown on the answer to that question. I feel like my brain glucose is low and I'm making dumb answers. You said in a video that Saudi Arabia can't have democracy because of oil prices fluctuating, but why does the US and Europe allow Mexico and Canada to have democracy? This is because Saudi Arabia controls politically more oil than a lot of the world. Canada was a democracy before it got oil. Saudi Arabia has more oil than Canada, and it is still, I think, the most oil-rich country on Earth. And also a head of OPEC. So what Saudi Arabia does still dictates a lot of oil prices around the world. If Canada was not a democracy, then the United States would definitely lobby to prevent Canada from becoming a democracy. But we already were one before oil really became a thing, so can't really undo that. Plus, Canada is a white country, and you don't want a white settler colonial country to get away, or to like white settler colonial countries can get away with things, especially because Canada just does whatever America says anyway. So there's little chance that we'll like stand up to the U.S. When will WHO classify you with a serious case of gaming disorder? They would have to have a very liberal definition of gaming disorder, because at the moment I think I play less than 1 hour of games a week, if that. I don't think I've played a video game in in a couple weeks now. I think the last time I played video games was when Kelly was out of town for the weekend because she was at a wedding. And that was like maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago. What all it comes to say is I'm not really good at video games. I don't really play video games a lot much anymore. When I quit my job, when I'm out of my job and I can actually have the occasional evening and weekend to do stuff, I might actually play some video games. But Medicare for All just covers the insurance part. The healthcare providers are still private, and they can lobby politicians to make Medicare pay whatever they want. That is definitely like one of the arguments that I said about how Sanders's plan is different from, like, say, Elizabeth Warren's plan. A lot of Medicare for All now that, like, Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren are proposing are not about taking Medicare out of the market, but are about getting to quote unquote universal coverage. And I agree with you that if you just like expand Medicare to be so that everybody has a cheap enough universal cheap enough affordable healthcare, costs aren't really going to go down. To make costs go down, you're going to have to take medicine out. Like, companies like Blue Shield are just not going to be able to exist. They just can't exist. There needs to be no people in between the costs of the cost between care and the cost of care. Nobody's trying to make a profit anyway. Okay. What is an extreme leftist to you? To my coworkers, my cousin is an extreme leftist by being as close to being a socialist as possible without being a socialist. I mean, the left-right spectrum breaks down in a lot of ways, but a leftist is an extreme leftist. Communists, anarchists, anybody who would call themselves that. In my mind, whether you see capitalism as a positive or negative force in the world is what defines whether you are left or right wing. Whether or not capitalism is a negative force that needs to be managed versus one that needs to be destroyed is, in my mind, the distinction between someone who's left wing and someone who's a leftist. But once you get past that point, then the rest is kind of just how much do you actually, when you start thinking about like overthrowing governments and things like that, that's when things start. I think that's when you get into the extreme side. Can you do a video on Aleister Crowley and Thelema? All right. We already know what my answer is about submitting ideas for videos. I gotta work on that at some point. Kelly, can you make me a note to address that the submitting of ideas at some point? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Do you think online content can ever pass into the real world? Karlgon is an example of this not happening, and Kekistan. I think that despite Karlgon's like epic failure to run in politics, the online world is already in the real world. I think the distinction is an anachronism for the most part. The idea that there is a difference between what you do online and what you do in the real world is a joke and becoming less and less of something that you can actually do. Online life is real life. Thoughts on cryptocurrency? I think it's mostly a scam. Cryptocurrency is like a way to scam libertarians out of their money. That's my position on it. Thoughts on PewDiePie losing to T-Series? It's fine. I don't particularly give a shit. PewDiePie sucks. T-Series is just a generic Indian like corporate channel, neither of which are anybody I have any strong stake in supporting. And I would love to see a right-wing asshole like PewDiePie lose. So, this, and subscribe to PewDiePie has now been used in mass shootings. So, whatever. Fuck it. I don't give a shit. All right. I think I've reached the end of the questions. That doesn't sound like me. Unless there's a new page. No, there's not. What happened? Whoa. This has never happened in a stream before. I think 255 AD is gone. That must be it. He's not here. There hasn't been a question from 255 AD since an hour ago. Oh. This is what happens. This is why I need 255 AD. I'm like an hour and 15 minutes into this, and people stop getting questions. What's your favorite color? Purple. What would the statues of pets and livestock in an anarchist commune? Are they members or property? Wait, what would be the the status of pets and livestock in an anarchist commune? Probably different in different communes. Man, I will say I have yet to work out my like thoughts and feelings on animal on like I am like somebody who has tried and failed to become a vegetarian or a vegan now 3 times. I have extremely conflicting feelings about it. Because like there's a radical animal rights angle to go down that I just I don't know. So to answer your question, Gad, I don't know. I hope that in an anarchist society that pets and livestock would be considered non-human persons, and that we would give them the respect that they deserve as animals, and that we would not eat them. Okay. Out of questions. What have you done with the real Tristan? I know I haven't gone on a 20-minute anti-capitalist rant today, so that's one other reason. Where are we? What is your favorite planet? I am prone to Venus, and I'll tell you a little bit about Venus. There you go. Oh wait, let's go with thoughts on the best saga. I haven't read the sagas. All right, what's your favorite planet? Okay, my favorite planet is Venus. And the thing about Venus is okay, so Venus is closer to the size of Earth than Mars. Venus is closer to Earth than Mars. Its problem is that it has this like fucking hell cloud atmosphere. But the thing is that Venus, because it has an atmosphere, actually might be an easier planet to colonize than Mars. Because like Mars, if you want to have like long-term fixing of Mars, you have to like make its you have to make its core start spinning again, which is like there's theories on how to do that, but like it's going to require like magnets larger than anyone has ever made or ever even thought of making. While like Venus, you just gotta stop the rampant climate change and get some water on there, and it's a planet that's not that bad for Earth. And on top of that, even when it is like got a very dense atmosphere, you can make like floating cities and floating colonies. It actually wouldn't be that hard because of the thick atmosphere. So that's what I would say. There's a lot of potential in Venus that we don't give credit for. All right, Some Random Geek. What books have you currently been reading? Which ones are the most interesting ones that you've been reading recently? Well, I am reading two books, basically. I switch between them depending upon how bored I am. I am reading a book that I recently purchased called The People's Republic of Walmart. It is a book about planned economies and how when you really look at successful companies like Walmart, which are large enough to be like small countries in and of themselves, their economy functions not too differently from a really well-oiled planned economy. And then if you look at the case of like Sears, which tried to internally restructure to be more based on competition and markets, failed miserably. And so what the thesis of the book is that in so many ways, the profit motive is not a very good way of driving economics, and that planned economies, especially with modern innovations in logistics, would run an economy way better than like say than the way that we do things now. With like all of the technologies that like Amazon has developed, with the technologies that Walmart has developed in like logistics and shipping and things like that, that like we could have an economy, we could run a socialist planned economy so much easier than we could run or so much easier, but so much more effective than a market economy. And when we do that, then we could, we no longer have to use profit as the only driver of goodness. And we can do things like make things like what makes life better for more people. What is like, you know, like we can force things to become economically or ecologically sustainable. We can make sure that we don't abuse workers. And like, because we can, a planned economy can have any incentives you want, not just what makes the most money, you can end up in a much better situation. And so that's why, that's the thesis of, what's it called? It's the thesis of the book. The current chapter I'm reading is on the NHS and how the NHS has gotten worse the more marketized it's become. So pretty good. The other book I'm reading is not like that, and it is a book called Tome of Beasts. You might be able to see it on my shelf back there. Let me see if it would be worth. So this is Tome of Beasts. It is a third-party Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition monster manual that has a bunch of monsters in it. And I just read it for fun, because, like, it's full of monsters to use to torture my players with. And, you know, sometimes it's fun to just read about monster lore when you're, you know, between reading about socialized economies. What do you think if the Union of Sovereign States, the plan to reorganize the USSR, was voted very strong with most SSRs would work out? So this is like this is like a very late. Is this like very late stage USSR plan to sort of break up the USSR into something more like the European Union? It's ambitious, but I do think that in many ways, Gorbachev was, you know, rearranging chairs in the Titanic. There's a lot of, like, you know, especially in alternate history circles, thinking about what is the way to what could Gorbachev have done to save the Soviet Union? And in my opinion, the Soviet Union sowed the seeds of its own destruction very early on, like right after World War II, when they started strong-arming countries into the Eastern Bloc, and they did stuff like the invasion of Poland and the invasion of Lithuania and Estonia and stuff. When you had a decent chunk of countries in your country that hated you and hated communism because, you know, their grandpa was killed by the freaking Red Army in like the 1940s, that's a sign that, like, yeah, this is not a plan for long-term sustainability. Thoughts on this fall's Canadian election? At the moment, things are still really up in the air on that. The thing about Canada is that our elections are a lot shorter than the United States, and so a lot can happen in a short amount of time. Current speculation is that we're almost definitely going to get into a minority government territory. The question is whether it's going to be a liberal or conservative one. What I remember about that is that there were a succession of minority governments about 15 years ago now, and it just led to us having an election about every like year and a half or so. So that could be, we could go back to that status. I was also reading this article just yesterday, actually, when I was getting my lunch. That was about how more people today are voting for parties that are not the big two parties than ever before. And that this election coming up, you might see the highest numbers since like the 40s of people voting for third, fourth, and fifth parties. So you could see that happening. Is the mutually assured destruction attitude towards nuclear weapons as dangerous as I think it is? How would an anarchist society control nuclear weapons? An anarchist society would dismantle them. That would be the answer. Mutually assured destruction has a stabilizing force, but not. But it doesn't. But the easier it gets to make smaller tactical nuclear weapons, the more dangerous it becomes. That one rogue actor could use it, or that something could just go wrong with one of the many nuclear weapons and set it off anyway, just due to like technical failure. Now, mutually assured destruction is not a terrible way of thinking about things, because I think a lot of the reasons why there was not several world wars after World War II probably have to do with the idea of mutually assured destruction, because, you know, you're less likely to spark a war, say, off the coast of Cuba if you know that it would cause the apocalypse. What are your thoughts off-the-wall current trends in the likes of Robinhood and most app-based investment and the correlation with a bubble bursting? Okay. What are your thoughts off-the-wall current trends of the likes of Robinhood and most app-based investment in the correlation with a bubble bursting? Okay, so I might not be understanding this question correctly.
Robinhood's an investment app.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Honestly, the thing you're talking about with bubbles bursting, like, if more people get invested, it's just going to mean that more people are going to lose their shirts when things burst. Poor people will always, like working class people will always lose their shirts when economic bubbles burst, because rich people can weather the fluctuations of the economy, while whether or not you're invested in the stock market, people are going to suffer when the bubble bursts. So in my mind, getting that involved in investment, like with Robinhood, I guess, in my mind I don't think it's ever going to result in you making shit tons of money. Really, you should just buy index funds, but whatever. But for the most part, like, when the bubbles burst, it affects the entire economy. Um, and it's nothing that really apps are going to tweak in any way. It's just sort of the natural cycle of economics. So it's going to happen one way or another. You're going to lose your money by losing the value of all your stocks, or are you going to lose it because your company is going to get shut down and they lay you off for one thing or another? What do you think of the Union of Sovereign States? Oh, we already answered that question. Thoughts current trend.
Maybe that has to do with the previous question.
Okay. Will you play Minecraft 1.14? If you don't, I will put it in my cringe compilation. Is there a new Minecraft version coming out? I haven't played Minecraft a lot since before it came out. The last time I played Minecraft in a significant quantity was like in 2011, like spring of 2011. Which was, I remember there was this period where it went like the longest time without patches. And now, like, I have no idea what the hell's going on in Minecraft. I just got to the point where I was just like Minecraft's a fun game, but then I'm like, every time I just like load it up now, I'm just like, what do I even want to do? Like, I'm not gonna build the Enterprise. I'm not gonna what do I even want to do right now? I just live? Just living long enough? Guess that's okay. I just never, I don't know. Anytime I load up Minecraft now, I'm just like, I don't even know. It's too much. It's just like, why do we even bother? Why is the Maldives not under the sea yet? It is soon. I think it's predicted to in the next, like, decade or so. To the point where the Maldives have actually had to set up a evacuation plan for the country. So, if I remember correctly, the entire population of the Maldives are actually going to get relocated to India when they basically don't have a country, which is very soon. When will you post some cringe? And is the DNC convention considered cringe? Oh, the DNC convention is definitely considered cringe. Whenever a Democrat comes onto the stage at an event with the song Fight Song playing, that is definitely cringe. Fight Song is the most cringe Democrat song you can play. And I don't know. I guess I can post. I don't know what cringe I can post. I feel like half of the things the fact that I just told you that I was reading a monster manual for a D&D thing, that should be a bit of cringe. Will you become an NCAP if the Koch brothers give you $10 million? No. That would, if the Koch brothers were like, I'll give you $10 million if you become an anarcho-capitalist, I really want to say I would say no. $10 million is like not even an amount of money my brain can process, so maybe I'd be able to say no to it just because it's so much. I feel like Kelly would leave me if I didn't become an anarcho-capitalist in that situation, though.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thoughts on Chapo's Trap House? I think it's a funny podcast. I know not everyone does. I think it's funny. I pay for the Grey Wolf feed, so I get the 2 episodes a week, and I have not been disappointed. It's funny. It's in a world where you're dominated by liberals, it's cathartic to have funny, sarcastic, ironic socialists. It's like a breath of fresh air anytime I get to listen to it. How did you choose your major in university? Funny story about that. I was, at one point, I was going to go to university for sociology, which I imagine you could find is pretty funny. So, can you imagine Step Back Sociology? Ugh. It would have been a terrible channel. But then when I was applying and choosing my major for my university application, I put in history because I got really into hardcore history, like the Christmas break when I was applying. And so I was just like, you know what? Like, I've always been a pretty big fan of history, and I'm going to university, and I'm like, out of all the things that I could study, I think history would be the one for me to do. And here I am, so I guess it worked. Will edgelords ever grow up? And thoughts on Pol Pot's Year Zero. Will edgelords ever grow up? I don't know. We've gone through like 3 generations now. Like Gen Xers, Millennials, and Zoomers both grew up in like this sort of pop culture of perpetual childhood. And in my mind, edgelords are teenagers who just kind of never grow up. And I do think that it's very likely that they won't. Thoughts on Pol Pot's Year Zero? I don't think I know anything about Pol Pot's Year Zero, or Pol Pot in general, I'm realizing. Except that he, like, killed all of the intellectuals, or he tried to, and he thought that, like, intellectuals were, like, people who wore glasses. And so they, like, killed people for wearing glasses. It's fucked up. Pol Pot's a bad guy, guys. Is there an unhealthy cult of personality evolving around Bernie Sanders? I feel like no. I feel like Bernie Sanders has like the opposite of a cult of personality. Like, he has no charisma. He has like anti-charisma. Like, there could not be a worse person to be pushing these ideas. The fact that it's just good ideas gets him miraculously to do better than like most politicians. Like, if you had some like I think Cory Booker is made entirely of slime. Like, I think he actually is a slime monster. He's got to be the most like I think he was made in a lab because the guy is too smooth. But also on top of that, he's just like, I'm trying to think of it. He's the smarmiest person I think I've ever seen in American politics, except for maybe like Ted Cruz. And he's just got like that background that just says that he's been running for president. He's been getting ready to run for president since he was like in the 3rd trimester. And it's just all really like just not authentic whatsoever. I feel like we're entering into a new age where authenticity is going to mean a lot more than presentation, which used to be the case. Presentation was everything. And I feel like now authenticity, or the appearance of authenticity, is now the thing. And Sanders, I think, wins on being authentic. And yeah, that kind of like anti-charisma. The fact that he wears suits that don't fit, and he has messy hair, and he just like makes lots of angry faces into microphones, I think is making people like him even more. Thoughts on Milo Yiannopoulos? He got yeeted by conservatives themselves. I don't even know where to go with Milo Yiannopoulos. So if anyone doesn't know, he's like an alt-right. It's like he sells himself as the alt-right gay troll. And then he kind of lost his. He was really popular for a while until he kind of said in some interviews that he thought pedophilia was okay, and I think that pretty much killed his career. To the point where I think he's like in huge amounts of debt now, and he's having serious financial issues. I don't know. I think Milo Yiannopoulos is someone whose 15 minutes of fame are over. And I've never really had any thoughts of ideas of what Milo Yiannopoulos is. Like, he didn't have any ideas. He was just an idiot. And now that he's out of the spotlight and in financial issues, he's just bad. There's no point in him. There's no point to him anymore. He doesn't deserve anybody's attention. I keep thinking this is going to happen with Jordan Peterson at some point, but people just keep talking about him when I really think we should he's peaked. Have you ever read of Paul Mason's book Post-Capitalist? Ollie Thorne recommends that book. I have not. I have not read it. I can put it on my giant pile of books to read. Why would you try to marketize healthcare? Because, well, in the case of the UK, because you're Margaret Thatcher and you suck. Have you read about Pfizer deciding not to pursue clinical trials on a drug that could potentially prevent Alzheimer's? Do you think this could be used for the advantage of Medicare for all supporters? Yes, I do think so. I think that there's a lot of things you could show that are examples about how when you keep medical research and all sorts of stuff in the market, you're going to optimize for things that are profitable, not for things that are good. One of the arguments in the book I'm reading, The People's Republic of Walmart, is about how the reason why we're having this antibiotics crisis is not because the bacteria are getting so wily now that we can't keep up, but that corporations can't make money. Like there's not a lot of profit to be made in developing new antibiotics, and so medical companies just aren't anymore. They're just not developing them. And also governments in general have cut funding for medical research. And between those two things, you basically end up in a situation where important medicines just either don't get researched or don't get brought to market because they're not profitable enough. And so, there you go. It's a sign that, if you add the market to things that are important to people's lives, it's poison. If you add the market to things that aren't important to people's lives, it's also poison. Just gotta say. Favorite Bible editions? Let's go with the Book of Mormon. Book of Mormon sounds fun. Good musical. How would an anarchist healthcare system run? Where would health regulations and building codes come from? Oh. Well, there's a couple answers to that. One, there would definitely be, anarchists would definitely have, there'd be no rulers, but it doesn't mean there wouldn't be any rules. Definitely having building codes and stuff like that would still be around, and building inspectors and things like that. In my mind, a lot of those things too, a lot of things like letting building codes lapse or allowing health code violations are when companies try to let things lapse in order to make more money. If that's not an incentive for you to do things, I think that the motives to let things collapse and not keep things safe will be pretty high. Because, you wouldn't have that. What do you think of De Leonism? You're the second person to ask about this, and I have no idea what it is. Thoughts on Sam Harris and the New Atheist movement? I was really into it back in 2008. And a bunch of the YouTube atheists who would eventually become fucking shitheads. I think Sam Harris is a fucking monster. The fact that Sam Harris is Sam Harris is a huge Islamophobe who has both said that there is an argument for torture and indiscriminate use of nuclear weapons as long as it's used to kill Muslims. Sam Harris is a fucking horrible human being. Did you know that the founder of AIPAC was Canadian? No. Sorry. Sam Harris was always a bigot. I just grew out of it. How long is too long an election? I don't know. I'm not even sure how you'd measure that. I feel like a month is good. Gets you a chance for a couple debates. Gets you a chance to get some ads out there. Gets you a time to think about the election. And then it's over before people get sick of it. A month sounds good to me. Is the nuclear war going to start in the conflict between India and Pakistan? If so, should we even worry about global warming if you're all going to die in nuclear winter? Oh boy. I definitely love the thinking about whether or not we should worry about climate change killing us or nuclear war killing us. I'd really like. I mean, India and Pakistan they're in a pretty tense situation, to say the least. And if nuclear war breaks out, that is definitely one of the places that it could happen. I'm not. Whether or not that would end the world, I'm not sure, but it definitely would be pretty bad. Thoughts on transhumanism? I used to really be into transhumanism. I'm less like, not that I'm against it now, but I'm just like less interested in it. I think that a lot of transhumanists today are cheerleaders for technologies that are in very early stages of development, and they make unrealistically optimistic assumptions about how those technologies are going to develop. Like, in my opinion, I don't think that memory uploading is a thing that's going to happen anytime soon. I think that there's no way to argue for it. There's no way to there's no way to estimate how long it's going to take, because like things like, we have no clue how our brain works, really. Like, we don't even have the faintest clue how our brain works. And so we are a long, long way away from having even if we had the computing power to simulate a brain, for being able to actually simulate a brain. And then memory uploading. And then there's of course the transporter problem. And there's a whole litany of issues that a lot of times transhumanists are way too optimistic about. Where do you usually do your research? Regular books? Do you have some kind of history database? Do you know any historians you talk to a lot? Where do I usually do my research? Mix of places. I go to the public library. I am lucky enough that I live near a really, really big library. And for history research specifically, a lot of the good stuff is in books. I also the login for my university library stuff still works, so I can still log into my university library and download some articles. Those are the main places where I get books and journal articles, and then I'll look around online for some stuff too. And more lately, I do try to talk to historians or other experts. My next video is going to have at least one interview with an expert. The one after that is going to have two. And I hope to keep that up, because I actually think that results in me getting a lot more. Like, I think the Paris Commune video was made a lot richer because I got to talk to Donnie Gluckstein. Have you heard Change UK split in half today? I don't know what Change UK is. What kind of song would Bernie Sanders come on to? What song should Bernie Sanders have playing as he comes out on stage? Definitely This Land Is Your Land. Or This Land Belongs to You and Me, because he sang it in his folk album. And I feel like he should embrace his Vermont hippie roots. Have you heard of Hotep? They're basically black nationalists that really like Egypt. Yes, I have heard of them. They comment a lot on my Sudan video. What are the weirdest historians that you know? Weirdest historians. Oh, boy. Weird is a strange word to think about. 'Cause, I know historians that are rather eccentric. Like, I had a supervisor who has, 7 3D printers in his basement. Or one that has a podcast where he talks about a 1980s sitcom. I don't know. That's that. Those aren't really answers, though. I can't really answer your question, Argo. Sorry. How did you meet Kelly? Okay, Cupid. Best rivers. Mine is the Volga. All right. All right, August. I don't have a favorite river. Sorry. Maybe the Saint Lawrence. Because there's whales in it sometimes. How hard would it be for someone to start a history YouTube channel without a formal history education? I don't think it would be. I mean, there's definitely an uphill battle, but as long as you, if you're a strong autodidact, if you can teach yourself how to do things and you can keep up a high standard of research, then yeah, I think that it's not bad. It definitely would help if you had a formal history education, because then you have a background of information that you learned in classes to rely on. And on top of that, you've learned research techniques and writing techniques in a way that a lot of people haven't. Is this a book club now? No, it isn't. Would Boris Johnson be one of the worst PM opinions after Theresa May leaves at the end of the week? And why Boris Johnson? I mean, Boris Johnson sucks. He's like, I thought everyone hates him. But wouldn't Boris Johnson end up becoming like, he would almost guarantee that Jeremy Corbyn would be prime minister, which wouldn't be the worst thing. But Boris Johnson would be like the British version of Trump getting elected. Thoughts on YouTube channels that exist just to shill a particular product or company? Yeah. I mean, I don't like them. I'm sure some people do. If they do it all right, like if they're like Will It Blend, for example, was just a YouTube channel that was trying to sell blenders, but they did it in a fun way. So like that's not like the worst thing in the world. I mean, corporations in general suck, but you might get some half decent content if they're good enough at it. Stephen Hole Up didn't punish some renegade American Jews in the Book of Mormon by changing their skin color, and then the darker evil Jews killed the white ones. Not the best religious book. Oh boy. Well, Book of Mormon's got some issues, huh? Well, shit. I mean, every religion's got issues, but those sound particularly egregious. Listen, I don't have a favorite book of the Bible, okay, or a favorite edition of the Bible. I haven't even read one of them. Is it bigoted to describe cultural tradition as primitive? Example, traditional Chinese medicine using rhino horn to cure cancer instead of modern medicine. Primitive, no. Primitive implies some sort of progression, while like China is a very advanced society that just happens to have clung to pre-scientific medicine in a weird way. I would think that this is more of it is a scientifically inaccurate tradition. It is a tradition that exploits endangered animals, but to call it primitive would be kind of a misnomer. Is this the worst timeline, or is one where the spiders become rulers of the earth worse? It's a close call. I think this might be worse. I welcome our spider overlords. Okay. I do like the gender dynamics of spiders, where the women are 8 times larger than the men and during coitus eat their heads off. I feel like that's a good gender dynamic that we should emulate. Would you rather live in an anarcho-primitivist society or fascism? As an able-bodied dude, I would probably go with, actually, if you were disabled in either of those society, you would be fucked. So I would go with anarcho-primitivism. Thoughts on Roko's basilisk? Don't know what that is. Thoughts on the fact that driverless cars drive over African Americans more often? That's fucked up. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about with that, like about how facial recognition technology for cameras tend not to recognize black faces because they're designed and collect all of their data on white people, because it's kind of like the computer programmer version of what's called in psychology weird data, which is that it's kind of like a joke I was... Jesus Christ, what's going on outside? It's like garbage truck or something. Yeah, so there's it's the effects of the fact that Silicon Valley is full of white dudes. But on top of that, it's also why and that is kind of an effect of like how the way that we treat or the way that we educate people and the cultures, the work cultures of these places lead to strange results and weed out people of different racial backgrounds and such. Like, for example, in psychology, there is the thing of weird data. And I used to make the joke that if we, if science keeps going the way it does, like white college students are going to be the most mentally healthy people on Earth, and mice are going to live forever, because weird stands for white educated. IRD. What's the rest of that?
White, educated, something rich.
Oh yeah, rich. Basically, it's the sign that because psychology usually relies on like studies of people doing like surveys and things like that, and because they tend to recruit on campuses, that a lot of psychological studies, their subjects are almost entirely like white educated, like white college students, and that skews the data. Do you think there is elitism in academia? Oh, definitely. Some people try to back away from it, but there are some people who... There's definitely like the hierarchy of like, oh, you would understand my position if you had just read the books I've read, and you've just like, like gone through the things that I've gone through, and that is like the position of like there's definitely like intellectual browbeating because you can like list off more last names of people who wrote books than other people. Universities, for example, definitely prioritize some subjects over others. Like the university I went to put way more emphasis into STEM and science and medical research than like, say, the humanities or philosophy. So like while history was getting like its budget cut every year and they couldn't hire any new faculty members, the like medical science school was getting like multi-million-dollar grants and were like hiring their PhD students full time, while like ours were like getting kicked out after 4 years. So yeah, there's definitely, and not to mention the further up the education thing you go, the more likely you are to be a suburban white guy. So yeah, there's a lot of elitism going on in the academy that really needs to be addressed. Thoughts on GMOs? I think they're fine. The biggest issue I have with GMOs is when genes get patented. That's the main thing. What's the deal with the Black Israelites? Are they in any way Jewish? I don't think so. They I don't really know too much about the Black Israelites except that they are a sort of black revisionist history movement that reinterprets all of history as being basically all of the great accomplishments of history being done by black people, and that the truth has been suppressed by the white man. I can understand where it comes from. I think the main thing that the word Black Israelite comes from the fact that they think that they're the chosen people of God, and that they believe that like the people, like for example, for the people of Ethiopia are related to the Queen of Sheba and like King Solomon and things like that. So it's like, it's got something to do with that. Why have gamers become the impressed linguistic minorities of today? Is society going full circle? Oh boy. Well, Discord went down on Sunday, so that's a sign that the assault is beginning on the gamers. With Sargon trying to run for UKIP, what do you think of YouTubers running for office? Who would you like to see run? Prime Minister Oliver Thorne? That'd be a pretty fun one. That's like the first one that comes to mind. I would love for I feel like Dan Olsen would be a good politician if he ran. Is it less lucrative to be a reactionary on YouTube now? It's still very lucrative. Like, Steve Crowder is probably one of the most well-paid YouTubers out there, because even if no one watches your stuff and YouTube tries to demonetize your content, the Koch brothers money will keep you going. But like, I think YouTube is finally starting to come around to it. I'm just about to like, but YouTube, like, I think the whole Carlos Maza situation has kind of shown that like YouTube cares about engagement, and reactionaries are good engagement, and so YouTube will just keep supporting this cesspool of reactionary content because it keeps people on YouTube, and because of that they'll create a movement. And I think that we were talking about Facebook with fake news and the rise of the radical right as like in all these spaces. And I think that one of the places that people don't acknowledge as one of the places where the radical right was born and grew and festered was on YouTube. And how the YouTube recommendation engines push you further and further down a rabbit hole of shit. With Sargon, we answered that one. Will you become a video game streamer if you get the chance? I feel like you have to have a very specific type of personality to be entertaining while playing video games. And I don't think that's my personality. Like, I've tried. Like, I tried on Step Back Tonight playing video games, and the data showed you guys didn't like it. You didn't do very well. So, in my mind, I don't see that as likely. I don't think it's my thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just don't think it's my thing. I feel like if I became like a Twitch streamer or something, I'd have to think long and hard about what it would be. Become a Janist. Ha! I do like Janists. I think they're cool. I'll be making a video about them probably sometime next year. Did you see Crowder's shitty apology? No, I didn't. Sorry. All right, we are at the end of questions, and I know this is a little early for me, but my throat is really, really hurting, and I would like to, I would like to close down shop a little early if it's okay with you guys. So I think we're gonna wind down now. Sorry for the technical issues at the beginning. I'm still trying to work out what the problem is there. But this has been a great stream. I hope that you guys will be around next week when the next stream happens. And please keep tight, be nice to each other, and see you when I see you. Thanks, everyone.